Good afternoon. We're going to tell you about Jakarta EE Security and some of the new features in Jakarta EE 10. Have any of you been to the community day yesterday? Okay, so not just for one, it may sound familiar, but for the others it should be a bit newer then. So we're going to look at the motivation, why Jakarta Security was even there in the first place. Use cases in a cloud-native environment, looking at the specifications and what the latest release brought. And then, I guess in the interest of time, the demo may only be code in the slides, but there are also links to demo applications that you can look up and check out for yourself. So I'm an open source evangelist and software architect, a regular author and speaker. I'm the maintenance lead of 2 GSRs, and I have also been re-elected to the Jakarta EE Specification Committee.
Yeah, and my name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. And yeah, I think you were kind when you said it's if we have time. I think we set out. The reason why we were late is that we were trying to put the demo together and we didn't make it, so we have to do it in slides.
Yeah, troubled waters. I guess maybe for some of the older generation, you probably know the Columbo episode, and other people may know similar sounding movies from the Netflix area. So where do enterprise runs nowadays? Usually the applications ran on site with a monolith, but nowadays the monolith changes to microservices or even serverless. So on-premise, you usually have control over authentication and the identity propagation, while in the cloud, this gets more complex. You can have either on-premise or in the cloud, or a combination of both. And you have a combination of multiple identity providers. So deploying Jakarta EE apps in the cloud can be a challenge, because does each microservice deal with identity on its own, or do they use a federated identity? And what about the network boundary? So we have 3 main topics. One is authentication, that the application may manage users externally or internally. It must authenticate those users against several identity stores. And the behavior of these should be the same, regardless of whether it's basic auth, OpenID Connect, or something else. So here we see the various stages from development, testing, pre-production, and moving that into the cloud. The application must be able to determine the identity of that caller. When we say caller, we usually refer to it based on the spec. Some of the other frameworks sometimes call this user. The security context allows the application to access user attributes consistently, whether a user is authenticated or not, the groups and the roles, identity providers, and also a consistent API to access the security context. So Jakarta EE Security consists of 3 major specs. 2 of them are sort of lower level SPI type of specs, Jakarta Authentication and Authorization, while Jakarta Security sits on top and is usually the application or developer-facing API. The common principle behind Jakarta Security were to simplify the programming model, to enable developers to manage security, and having these layered APIs that delegate on top of each other, and to use CDI wherever appropriate. In Jakarta EE, you can either support the configuration programmatically or declarative using XML files or other types of declaration. So let's look at the 3 specs. First of all, Jakarta Authentication is a portable authentication mechanism. It abstracts the identity store. It's simple to configure, and it's extensible to also support protocols like OAuth or OpenID Connect, which, as a matter of fact, OpenID Connect has been integrated into Jakarta EE 10. So it comes out of the box, and that means you have fewer coding to do on your own. It's an evolution of the JASPIC standard under the GSR number 196, and it produces a consistent representation of the authenticated subject with events like login, logged out, or no permission. Here, a very quick overview of OpenID Connect for the sake of time, but I guess. How many of you have used it? OK, well then I guess we can skip over it much faster. And also go over this slide very quickly. Then the next spec is Jakarta Authorization. It's again a lower-level SPI-like authorization module for authorization policies, for configuring these policies, and to create policy configurations using a factory, as well as a SPI for the policy context. Here's an example. So here you see the lower-level equivalent, and we'll see those again in 2 variations in Jakarta Security, and then Ivar will also show you what we tried to run with the actual code on the slides. So Jakarta Security is the application spec, application-facing spec. It standardizes terminology that has been a kind of a best-of-breed inspired by various other popular frameworks along the lines of Spring Security and others. It provides an API for authentication mechanisms, an identity store, a security context, and allows role permission assignment. So this identity store abstracts the identity of a user. And there can be various stores. There have been some built in already, like LDAP, relational databases. And others can be added, like social logins. And of course, now OpenID Connect was added in the latest Jakarta EE version. Here's again from the Jakarta Security layer to access the application. And that brings us to Jakarta EE 10.
Yeah, so in Jakarta EE 10, as Werner is talking about, there are these 3 specs. You have authorization, authentication, and security itself. So authorization and authentication are kind of the lower level stuff that we normal people don't really use that much. So these are the stuff they added there. That is kind of what's needed to provide a foundation for future work in the security API. And the same thing with the authentication. It's kind of make it a little bit better. Also note deprecation of security manager. So they're already here in EE10 preparing for that after JDK, after 17 actually, in 18 they started changing things with the security manager, and it has been marked for deprecation, and all the security and all the EE specs will have to do something to kind of get rid of using the security manager when it disappears. So that's sort of something that will be a big theme for the next EE release.
Maybe someday even substitute it, similar to what happened with XML binding.
Yeah. So, and that brings us to the Jakarta Security spec, which is one that you're actually using. And as Werner said, OpenID Connect is the big thing. And this is what we had in mind to demo. And we kind of created a backup slide here just to have it in case, and that's a good thing we did since it didn't work. But I'll show some code anyway, and maybe we can, let me see here if I can switch to the IDE, and then go to the presentation mode. Let's see, sometimes you have to tickle IntelliJ a little. So, what we're talking about, the identity store, the authentication mechanisms, all these kind of things are things that kind of, you just add what you need and the container picks it up. So if we look at some very simple simple one here, for example, we're mixing a little bit with MVC and stuff, but the thing is, if I add some security configuration in my application config, like here I'm defining which roles are this application going to allow. So this is what you normally would do in WebXML or outside of the application. But here I'm just saying these are the roles. And then I can just add a authentication mechanism that has a CDI scope. And in this case, it's request scoped. It could be application scope or something else. And this authentication mechanism can do authentication in whatever way you want. Like this is super simple. It just checked that it has a request parameter called name and password. Nothing is encrypted or anything. It just checks there and creates these credential validations, notifies the container, and then returns. And in the same way, a simple identity store can also just be supplied. And here I'm checking that the user should be called Duke, and the password should be Dan. So if those match, I'll give the roles foo and bar to Duke. So you can do these kind of hard-coded, simple, really things, and just add it, just by simply being there, it will be picked up. And you can prioritize these identities, or so if you have several of them, the one with the highest or lowest or whatever order they chose is going to be chosen. And in other cases, if you, for example, in this application up here, we're using some you can see here, I've defined the authentication mechanism actually inside the class. So here I don't supply a authentication mechanism. I can annotate it here and say, just go to this login page and do the form-based authentication. And also here I've added this hard-coded identity store. If the identity store wasn't there, then nobody would be logged in. But so you can sort. But in this case, I didn't even add a authentication mechanism. I just annotated my configuration class with it. And that is also what we did with the OpenID Connect example. Is that I added a simple identity store, but this one was just going to say that, hey, if I came in with my Google email, I'd get the foo role. So here it's just a role assignment I'm doing. I'm not doing anything password checking or anything. I'm just saying, give this user foo. And the entire configuration here is, it's all here. So don't look at these secrets, because these are secret. And anyway, you have to change this, Werner. Because if we're recording now, everybody can authenticate with your app. So. Yeah. Anyway, our problem here was that I can start it, and maybe Andro or something, someone can help us afterwards to get it work. But our problem is that we got a certification error when we were going to this provider. So we probably just have to add the certificate to the Java runtime, and then it works. And this one just prints high if it goes through. And here I'm doing everything security-wise in the application. You see, I have the authentication mechanism. I'm declaring the roles, the servlet, and I'm setting which roles do you need to access the servlet. So it's very application developer-centric. And in addition to this, I add this identity store I have. That could also be an annotation, I think. I'm not really sure. So I'm sorry we weren't able to actually run this. I could run it, but you'll only see the exception log from Glassfish. So that's not that interesting, I guess. Let me see if I can get back to slides here as well. There we are. So these are the other things that they also added in addition to OpenID Connect. And these are also just things that are nice to have for future functionality, such as the serialization of call principal and the interceptor as a CDI bean. So it's kind of everything is with the theme to go CDI centric. So, but I guess I'm just seeing there are not that many slides left. We actually have time to run some of the examples that we had, if that's interesting. Or do you have anything to add, Werner?
Yeah, maybe a question in between.
Yes.
As you said, this is a very developer-sided approach of implementing security aspects. So especially the provider aspect is quite convenient, I think. But as we always have to do with legacy applications where there's a lot of logic and a lot of implementation magic happening inside the application servers, is there a kind of transition or mix in between these two concepts? Or especially the question, are there some kind of default identity provider implementations that come from the server side, or do we always have to use our own application implementations?
Well, for OpenID Connect, you now have one that's built in. Previously, there were already some vendors that either in their product or as sort of demos showed how to do this on top of earlier versions. So that's another one, and there should also be one or the other. We're not yet sure whether we'll add some, for example, for the social logins. That's because social media is changing quite fast, and there was a plan to standardize that many years ago in the JCP, and that wasn't well received, also for the sake that these things keep changing a lot. But at least, yeah, and most of them use OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect now anyway. So with OpenID Connect, you can cover all the major social networks and identity providers that are out there, whether it's Google or Twitter or Facebook.
Yeah, so what you see here on the screen is I'm running this, it's on EE9, so I'm running it in Glassfish 6. And I'm using this form MVC application. And this one has the authentication mechanism, form authentication mechanism definition, where it says redirect to the login page if you're not logged in. And the index page is just sending me to the hello page, and the hello page is just going to show which roles do this user have. So this is what I'm expecting to see. But when as you see, when I access this page, I don't get there. I'm redirected. You can see it's probably hard to see, but the URL here is the /hello that I was going to, but it displays the login page. So if I now log in with Duke Dance, it will say the username is Duke, and these are the roles, and it doesn't have the cast role. And that is what comes from the identity store that I gave Duke, Foo, and Bar. And the controller prints out the name and this. So you see it's kind of, that's how it works. You kind of hook in what you need. I don't know if any other. Yeah, we can look at this simple MVC that has the same role definition in the application config. It has the same controller saying hello, and here it has the same simple identity store. But here, rather than having a form-based authentication, we're doing this simple one where we're looking for request parameters. So if I deploy this one, it should be, it was simple MVC there. I'll take this. So if I deploy this one, I should go localhost 8080 simple MVC. I wasn't at that. Okay, no, I just have to check what the URL was. Simple MVC. Should have an index page there. And the name of it was simple MVC. It should be simple MVC. It's running on a different port, maybe. So, yeah, it's on 8082. That's the thing. Simple MVC. Okay. Oh, it doesn't want to go there. So, for some reason, this one wouldn't show up, but it's not there. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. So let's take the next one. It actually kind of works with REST as well. And for REST, I have the same role declaration. I have this service here that is protected by or it just says it's protected here, and it's checking if it is in role foo. I'm using its simple authentication mechanism, and this is another hard-coded kind of dangerous way of doing it. I'm just checking does the URI contain protected, then this one hooks in. Otherwise, it will display. And then I just add it checks for an API key in this case, so it doesn't even check for username and password or any other login. You can kind of do this, force it to do this, and the unprotected will just show whatever. So let's see if this one will run. I'll deploy the what was it? Simple REST. There you go. Deploy it. Well, actually, I think I have this a little better setup here. Host 8082 simple REST API public. Oh, what was it? It's not my day today. It's API, and it's public, and does it have another path? It's public and hello. Okay, thanks. So here you can see it just gets read in since it's public with the role false. If I go to the protected one, it says also hello with the role foo is true for some reason, and that's probably because I already have the API key since I ran the demo last time. So if I don't have this API key, then you see it's unauthorized. So you see it works, and even with REST to just add this and then you show it.
Okay.
So. Yeah, that was the demo.
So that was the demo.
Yeah. And you've written a book.
Yes. And there's at least one book if somebody wants to buy it for 50% off. There's one more left. They went away quite well yesterday already during the community day, but I have one last book if somebody wants to buy it signed. And for everyone else, when we publish the slide, you can download it either directly with the publisher, or you'll also find it on Amazon and most of the other online bookstores.
Yeah. And the resources for this, of course, there's always the Jakarta EE website to go to find everything you need to know about Jakarta EE. All the specifications are always also under jakarta.ee/specifications. There you have a list of all the specifications and all the versions. And if you know the version number and the short name, you can just type in Authentication 3.0 and you get right to that specification page, where you get access to the Maven coordinates, the PDF of the spec document, the TCK, and all the compatible implementations and everything you need to know about these specifications. And we also, these simple examples I showed here is on my GitHub. There are other examples in the Jakarta EE GitHub and the E4J GitHub, as well as in the security, the tutorial for Jakarta EE. And I also think that Arjan has a lot of samples on his pages, and several companies have security tutorials and stuff.
And Apress also provides all the samples from the book on GitHub as well.
Yeah. So, I guess we have some time for questions.
There was one question already. Any other questions?
Yeah, so the question is how if we have any examples with policy use, or how do you define use policies? I'm actually not sure if that's supported in this version.
You mean for Jakarta Authorization? Yes. Well, there are definitely authorization examples also in our book chapters. So I'm pretty sure that some of the repositories that Arjan contributed to, either his own GitHub repositories or the ones related to the book, you should find some there.
I think that security policies are defined by every application server differently.
Yeah.
Even an example of an implementation devices.
Yeah, I think, for examples for security policy configurations, I think the different vendors have their pages with instructions there. If there are any, I don't know if there are any thoughts on actually standardizing it so you would be able to do it in similar way as this in the application orientation or configuration. That could possibly be something the security spec could look at in the future.
Yeah.
But
so for Glassfish, most likely you should find it either directly in the Glassfish project or in some of the tutorials.
all right, so Yes?
One question. What do you expect from the security.next?
So the question is, what do we expect from security.next? Yeah, that's a good question, and I think I expect they continue to evolve the API, to listen to the community and users, customers, and extend it with the thing the community wants. And I know one of those things are better support for RESTful web services. I also know that token propagation has been talked about. So something along those lines. We'll just have to see. And if you have anything like policies or anything else you're interested in, they are open for issues. So just go to the issue tracker and file an issue.
And whenever Jakarta config is ready and available, then a future version of the security specs should also make use of it. So that in some cases, of course, where you saw that like you had the secrets in the code, that's something that you should not do outside the demos. But in some cases, you probably have to do this with resource bundles or different ways right now, or with expression language. In the future, you should also be able to configure that in a more unified way using Jakarta config.
One last question.
Just wanted to comment. Some sort of configuration is possible already with expression language.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's already nice, but yes.
Yeah.
We all wait for Jakarta config to happen, so that all these configurations can build on it.
Okay.
All right. Don't forget to use the app and or web page and evaluate the sessions. And we thank you.